Morena guys, hope you're all well. Today's vlog is all about step 2 in your permaculture design process, and it is stakeholder engagement. So, find the people who are going to be affected by your project, sit down at a table, it's time to chat. Hey guys, so like I said, today is all about stakeholder engagement. And for me, this was actually a really interesting process. I had underestimated how much my goals were affecting other people. And I hope that you'll get some sort of understanding and appreciation of everyone else who's going to be involved in what you're doing a little bit more after doing this little step. It's not the hands-on stuff that you're hoping to get into. But again, much like the vision section, it's a really key and important thing that you need to start thinking about. Now, I'd have to say that if you feel like you don't have any stakeholders involved in your project, you probably haven't thought through your design enough, because it doesn't matter what you're doing, someone is always going to be affected by the steps you're trying to take. So my first tip is to sit down and really think through the whole process of your project. Who is going to be affected the most by the small or big changes that you're trying to make? So for me personally, probably the main people who are going to be affected by my project is my partner Dion, because he's going to be living with me and having to deal with my fluctuating moods, and of course my mum, who won't be living in the same property that we're trying to develop out, but she does live on the same space. So I really want to make sure that everything that we do sits well with her, because originally this is her land. If I wanted to take this a little bit further, I could start to think about my neighbours, but at this stage I've kept it quite tight within my family, and that's solely because I live on a lifestyle block, so we're not exactly close to our neighbours. So for the better part, I don't think that any of the plans that we're going to have are going to really affect them. So who are the stakeholders that are going to be affected by your project? Maybe it's for your family, a community project, a self-reflection project. Whatever it is, figure out who is going to be interacting with the whole thing. Once you have all those people down on your piece of paper, it's now a really good time to garner a bit more information about them that you may already know. These might be things like their age, skills and expertise they might have, materials or resources they might have available to them. What are their hobbies and interests? Are there any special considerations you may need to take into account? Is someone allergic to a type of animal or a type of plant? Do some people need certain things on site, for example mobility access, or require a certain diet? And once you have this little snapshot ready to roll, it's the exciting time. It's when you can actually sit down with these stakeholders and get to understand their needs and wants. It could be that they want chickens or aquaponics, or they only want to drink rainwater that they've collected from their own roofs, or to have solar power. There's a whole range of wish lists that could be out there, but it's a good idea at the very beginning to get a whole list of them that you may not be able to implement straight away, but you could work towards in the long-term planning of your project as money comes along or as resources become available. A really cool whole idea that practical permaculture suggests doing is to sit down and go through a list of questions with all your stakeholders to help get their engagement in your project, and also find out a few of those niggly things. And really, the more detail you can get around these questions, the better, because it's going to really help to hone in on the right plan of attack for you and your project with whoever's involved. So, some things to think about. How long are you actually going to be on the site for? Is this just for 6 months to a year? Or have you bought a property somewhere and this is your forever home? If this is just a short-term thing, you don't want to be planting trees or plants that take many years before they fruit, like an avocado tree, for example. You want to be trying to pick crops that are fast growing and rotate out quite regularly so that you can get more abundance during the time that you're going to be doing this project. So time is a really key and important thing to think about. Another thing you may want to contemplate is, do you intend to make money from the site? It's important to understand that because that gives you an idea of scale. For example, having 2 to 5 chickens may be enough for your family. If you're hoping to sell it, you may want to be looking at getting 15 or more so that you've got enough for your family plus a surplus to sell on a regular basis. That also will affect quality and the types of food that you may plant. You might want higher rotation crops so that you're getting more turnover on your land, or you might be wanting to plant specific things that are in demand in your area. So this will really affect what sort of things you'd put on your property, whether it's just for your own personal use or for a market that you're trying to service. Another thing to consider is whether you want pets or livestock. So for me myself, I really wanted chickens so that I could have homegrown meat and eggs, and also I wanted sheep on the site as well to keep the grass down in the paddocks. Another thing to consider are the vehicles that you want to have on site. So hopefully if you're following permaculture practices, you're trying to cut down on your vehicle use. That would determine whether you're going to need certain types of driveways, fencing, carports, storage areas and things like that. So keep that in mind too. It is an important part for accessibility. Another thing that you want to sit down and think about while you're setting your goals is more realistic stuff, like do I have time to do this? Do I have the money to do it? Where am I going to get the materials? All those sorts of real world things. Another thing to consider around your stakeholders when you're talking with them is how you plan on actually doing this project. Okay, it's all very well to have this dream in the sky about doing a permaculture project, and there's nothing wrong with that, because part of having a vision is that it's kind of pie in the sky. But is it pie in the sky for you? E.g., are you going to be doing all of this yourself and building your house, your sheds or chicken coops, or building your compost systems, or are you going to get a contractor in, or maybe woofers? Another thing that you might want to get on lockdown is who will make the final decision. Is it you? Is it a client? Is it a majority vote for the best idea? Really key to understanding that, specifically if you've got lots of stakeholders in play, because otherwise you're not going to get jack all done if everyone isn't on board and there's no one who's going to make the final decision. They may hold knowledge about the area that you're not aware of. So for example, for myself, my mum has lived on this property for over 30 years, so there's so much she knows about it more than I do. And so it was an opportune time when I was doing this whole stakeholder review to ask her a few questions about the site so that I could garner some sort of understanding as well about what my design might need to take into account in the long term. So a few things that you might want to consider is whether there's any existing blueprints or maps or site contours, because those old plans are really key to understanding where existing amenities may be, like power, water, wastewater, communication lines and all those sorts of things. You also want to understand the local area. Is there any waste systems going on? You know, where is your rubbish collected from? When is it collected? Where is it going to? Is there recycling happening in your area? How does that work? Another really cool thing to sort of get to understand and know is if there's any existing constraints or issues with the land. Because it's just as important to know about all the good things as it is to know about all the bad things as well, so you can make steps in your design process to help mitigate them. For example, is there a lot of dust kicking up in a certain area because the ground's really arid and dry, or is there a section that's really windy and could use a windbreak? Are there neighbours that are really loud and noisy, or a busy road that is putting a lot of traffic noise into your property that you want to somehow screen off? Are there any legal restrictions stopping you from going to a certain height or to a certain boundary or to build at all? Does the site have any drainage issues? Have you noticed that there's certain reeds growing in an area which would indicate that the ground's quite wet and boggy? These are little things that you can try and garner off your stakeholders to help make your steps in understanding your site just that little bit easier. And that's really important, especially if you're buying a piece of land, to get that understanding off the previous owners before they move on. Okay, hope that helped. I have my fingers crossed that your stakeholder engagement meeting that you hold will go really smoothly, and that you've got some really cool ideas for questions to ask. Sorry, it's another one of those vlogs where it just is me blah blah blahing along.